I was 61 years, for months, and 9 days old when I realized that some fights don't come looking for you until you're too tired to run anymore. And when they finally show up, they come wearing pressed khakis and a smile that says they've already won. The kind of smile that makes your blood run hot and your hands clench into fists you haven't made since you were young enough to swing them without regretting it the next day. My name is Henry Fletcher, and the 15 acres I walk every morning before the sun is fully up have been in my family since 1952. My grandfather, Sergeant Walter Fletcher, came home from Korea with a limp that never quite healed, a chest full of medals he kept in a cigar box under the bed, and $11,437 in separation pay that could have bought him a quiet life. Instead, he sank every penny into raw California dirt outside a nowhere town and spent the next 35 years turning it into a farm that fed half the county through sheer willpower and a back that bent but never broke. I was 8 the first time he lifted me onto his shoulders so I could see the first green shoots breaking through after a spring rain. He smelled like sweat, coffee, and the kind of honest exhaustion that only comes from doing work that matters. His hands were rough as sandpaper, but when he pointed to those shoots, his voice was soft, almost reverent. See that, Henry? That's life pushing back against everything that tries to kill it. Don't ever let anyone tell you different. He died in that same field in 1987, heart attack at 72, still holding a shovel like he was mid-argument with the soil. We buried him on the ridge overlooking the tomatoes, and every sunrise since then has felt like a conversation with a man who never really left, just went underground to keep an eye on things. So when I looked up on the morning of March 15, 2024, and saw 4 strangers in matching Willow Creek Homeowners Association polo shirts walking through my tomato rows like they were on a damn garden tour, something inside me went very, very quiet. The kind of quiet that comes before a storm, when the air gets heavy and your skin prickles with the knowledge that everything is about to change. The woman leading them was Laura Hargrove, 56, hair the color of a new nickel, posture so rigid you could have laid a level on her spine and called it plumb. She carried a clipboard the way a general carries a battle plan. Behind her, 3 younger associates fanned out across my tomatoes with the lazy confidence of people who had never once been told no and had it stick. I felt the anger rise like floodwater behind a dam I'd spent 20 years building after my divorce. The same anger that used to choke me when Diane would stand in our old driveway at 5:45 a.m. with a measuring tape making sure my work truck was exactly 18 inches from the curb, smiling while she did it because she knew it made me crazy. Only this time the thing they were measuring wasn't a driveway. It was my grandfather's grave. My heart hammered so hard I could feel it in my throat, but I swallowed it down. My grandfather taught me that the first weapon a man has is self-control. Everything else comes after. Morning, I said when I was 10 feet away. You're on private land. Laura looked up from her clipboard and gave me the kind of smile realtors use when they're about to tell you your house is perfect except for the fact it's in the wrong zip code. We're conducting a preliminary environmental assessment for the Willow Creek community, she said, as if those words had ever made sense to anyone who could read a property line. Your agricultural activity impacts air quality, water tables, and aesthetic standards for 200 families. I reached into my shirt pocket and pulled out the laminated deed I've carried every day since I was 12. The plastic is cracked now, the edge is soft from 35 years of handling, but the ink is still black and the date is still 1952. I held it up the way another man might hold up a cross to a vampire. Ma'am, this farm was here when your subdivision was sagebrush and rattlesnakes. You're welcome to admire it from the county road, but you need to turn around and walk back the way you came. Right now. She took the deed like she was doing me a favor by touching it, glanced at the date, and handed it back with the same smile. Mr. Fletcher, times have changed. Community oversight isn't optional anymore. It's essential for maintaining neighborhood integrity and protecting property values. Behind her, one associate was already photographing my irrigation pipes like they were evidence in a murder trial. Another knelt in the dirt examining my tomato plants the way a coroner examines a body. The third measured the distance from my fence to the county road with a tape measure that probably cost more than my grandfather's first tractor. I felt the heat crawl up my neck. The same heat I felt the day Diane told me the garden hose coiled counterclockwise was a violation of Covenant 12.4, and that if I didn't fix it by sunset, she'd have it cited and fined. My hands wanted to shake, but I locked them at my sides. Because I am my grandfather's grandson, and he taught me that a man who loses his temper loses the war. Ma'am, I said again, slower this time. I'm asking you politely one time to leave my property. Laura's smile thinned into something sharp enough to shave with. We'll be conducting regular assessments over the coming months. I hope you'll be more cooperative with community improvement efforts in the future. As they walked away, I heard her tell the young man with the camera, this one's going to be difficult, but we've handled worse. The strategies are already in place. Phase 2 starts next week. Strategies. That word settled in my gut like a stone, heavy and cold, and I stood there feeling the weight of it long after their dust settled. That night I sat on the porch long after dark, listening to the coyotes call across the ridge and feeling the weight of every sunrise my grandfather had watched from this exact spot. I was 61 years old, divorced, childless by choice after watching what marriage did to a man's soul, and suddenly terrified that the one thing I had left to fight for might be taken by people who thought a perfectly straight sidewalk was more important than a man's legacy. I wish I could tell you the anger cooled. It didn't. It settled into something colder, harder, and infinitely patient. The kind of anger that can wait months if it has to, because it knows the other side will blink first. A week later they came back, this time 6 of them, with real surveying equipment and the smug certainty of people who believe the county was already on their side. I was waiting with coffee and a running phone camera and a heart that felt like granite. Laura Hargrove marched straight to my greenhouse like she'd been doing it her whole life. Phase 2 assessment, she announced, as if I'd invited her for Sunday brunch. We need soil samples and detailed measurements for county compliance. I felt the same cold settle in my chest, the same cold I felt the day I watched Diane load my tools into a moving truck, while she smiled and told the judge I was unreasonably attached to manual labor. But this time I was ready. I showed her the certified mail receipt with her signature, 4 days old, acknowledging my written trespass warning. Laura, you're committing a crime right now. Every one of you. The surveyor, Thomas Riley, looked like he wanted to be anywhere else on earth. He approached me quietly while Laura barked orders. Sir, I told them this needed landowner consent or a court order. I'm just the contractor. I don't want trouble. I met his eyes. Thomas, you walk off my land right now, and you might still have a license tomorrow. You stay, and you're part of whatever they're planning. He packed his tripod and left without another word, shaking his head like a man who'd just seen his future disappear. Laura watched him go with fury that cracked her perfect mask for the first time. Then she turned on me, voice rising, all pretense of civility gone. Your refusal to cooperate is forcing us to protect this community by any means necessary. They stayed 43 minutes. 43 minutes of strangers digging in my compost, photographing my storage shed, measuring my life like it was already theirs to sell. When they finally left, Laura handed me a thick folder of preliminary findings full of scientific words and color-coded charts that made my organic farm sound like a toxic waste site. I took the folder with fingers that wanted to crush it, and I smiled the way my grandfather smiled the day the county tried to condemn 5 acres for a bike path. Thank you, ma'am. This will be Exhibit A. That night I did not sleep. I sat at the kitchen table with every deed, every survey, every permit spread out like a battle map, and I felt the old Marine in my grandfather standing behind me, hand on my shoulder, whispering, They want a war, Henry? Then give them one they'll never forget. And that, friends, is exactly what I did. What followed was 6 months of pure, methodical, ice-cold justice. The kind of justice that doesn't shout, doesn't posture, just keeps moving forward until the people who started it wish they'd never been born. I documented every trespass, every threat, every lie. I discovered Laura's husband Richard was vice president of land acquisition for Summit Real Estate Group. I uncovered the $125,000 in consulting fees funneled through shell companies to pay for professional surveys disguised as environmental monitoring. I recorded board meetings where Laura accidentally admitted the entire campaign was about forcing me to sell so Summit could build Phase 2 of Willow Creek, another 150 houses on land my grandfather died defending. And when they made their final, desperate, 10-person raid on my farm, 4 full hours of criminal trespass, while they gleefully discussed lot yields and view premiums and how my grandfather's tomato rows would make perfect cul-de-sacs, I let my trail cameras roll and never once raised my voice. Because some fights you don't win with shotguns. You win with evidence, patience, and the kind of righteous anger that burns cold enough to last a lifetime. The end came swift and merciless. Federal indictment. Arrest at dawn. Laura in handcuffs on the evening news, still trying to claim she was protecting community values, while the cameras caught the exact moment her face crumpled and she realized the game was over. Richard facing 36 months for racketeering, led away in front of the neighbors who once voted him Man of the Year. Summit Real Estate bled millions in fines and restitution, their stock cratering the day the judge read the verdict. Willow Creek HOA dissolved into chaos. Every household hit with an $800 special assessment to pay for the mess their president made. Mailboxes suddenly missing their perfect little HOA stickers. Laura lost everything. House, savings, reputation, marriage, freedom. Last I heard she was working nights stocking shelves in a discount store in Oregon under an assumed name, still flinching every time someone says the word covenant. Richard's career is dead. No company will touch a convicted felon who tried to steal a 61-year-old farmer's legacy for cul-de-sacs. And me? I still walk my 15 acres every morning at sunrise. The tomatoes are heavier this year. The soil smells richer. The silence is deeper. And when the wind moves through the rows, I swear I can hear my grandfather laughing. A low, satisfied rumble that says, Good job, Henry. They came for our dirt. You gave them hell. They kept trespassing on my farm. I warned them. Now they're paying for it big, every single one of them. So tell me in the comments, have you ever been pushed to the edge by people who thought rules were only for little people? Ever watched injustice try to take something sacred and get crushed instead? Ever had to choose between rolling over or fighting with everything you've got left in your tired bones? Drop your stories below. No detail too small, no rage too old, no victory too quiet. I read every single one. And if you're still here, thank you for listening. See you in the comments.